Hello, hello, and good morning, beautiful people. So excited to have you all here today, and super excited even for those of you that weren't able to join live but are going to be able to watch this in the future. If you find the information useful, as always, share it with a friend. Be that generous one that helps your fellow industry professional, because as you know, our slogan is community over competition, and we wholeheartedly believe in that methodology and way of showing up in this industry. Today, we are so honored. We have the guys from Shears. They're going to be here, owners and creators, and they're going to be here and they're going to share all their wealth of knowledge, everything they know about the importance of shears and what we need to consider. So really, without further ado, would you gentlemen like to first start off by introducing yourselves?
My name is Sean Fitzgerald. I work with here.
Hold on one second. I'm having a hard time hearing you. All of a sudden there's no noise and you're not muted. So just go ahead and check your video, or I'm sorry, your audio input. I know you were working just a couple seconds ago.
Okay.
So
can you hear us now?
Such are technological glitches.
Hello, can you hear us?
Yep. Okay. Might have been my computer. Thank you so much.
Oh, no problem. My name is Sean Fitzgerald. I have a bachelor's degree in business entrepreneurship. I started sharpening various hairstyling shears when I was 18 years old. Thank you to my father. He has been sharpening shears collectively for 15 plus years. We've been in business together and we work together, and the idea of Fitzy really was, conceived from sharpening shears. And I'll let my father explain kind of how that was kind of incepted.
Yeah, I'm Michael Fitzgerald, and I've been in the metalworking industry my whole life until one day when somebody presented a beauty shear to me, and I didn't really know a lot about beauty shears at that point, but they just caught my interest. And so I started servicing shears all around Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, and I started seeing all the various shears, and I noticed that a lot of them weren't very good. And there was always the problem where people were complaining about the last person that sharpened these shears. And a lot of that has to do with, taking care of it, holding the shear right, keeping it tensioned, buying a good quality shear in the first place. And it was kind of a surprise that people just didn't really understand the steel and the shears and why somebody would spend, $1,600 as opposed to like $100 for a shear. And they're just not going to perform the same. And your end product's going to show it. Your customer's going to notice it. And so that's kind of how we went down the trail. We sold a lot of different shears over the years. And then over the last few years, we wanted to bring our own quality product to market that we could stand behind. So when I would, sell somebody a shear and tell them it was good, it actually did what I said it was going to do. Because I didn't want to be in that position anymore. So we started out with a midline of shear where the quality is as good or better than most that's out there. And then we moved up into a top end line of shears that's completely Japanese. We have some specialty shears that save, like I love selling a shear to somebody that can save them 40 to 50% of their work. Instead of wearing their body out, they can go in and do the same job with a shear with half the effort. And it's life-changing. And I love to put something like that into somebody's hands and then go back.
That is beautiful, beautiful. And really everything that we're in alignment with. For many of you, you have also participated over the past couple of weeks in many of our now virtual cutting programs that we often do in the salon. And so, we wholeheartedly, as a group of leaders, believe in the ergonomics of body. And we've had that, that conversation in a lot of our virtual education, and really talking about not just posture, but how can we reduce tension in our elbows, I said our elbows and touch my wrist, in our elbows, in our wrists. I swear I know those things, just not algebra 2. So, when we're talking about it, how does the scissor that you choose relate to reducing tension, which can be translated into reducing tension means longevity in this career, right? If we don't end up with the carpal tunnel or the frozen shoulder, these things are instrumental in longevity. So could you share a little bit about how scissors play their part in that?
Well, the first thing with the scissor, we could go through the anatomy of the scissor. You want to have a scissor that's going to be good quality, a good quality of craftsmanship, so that you can keep the scissor, tensioned properly, and that it will perform, to your satisfaction all the time. And that's where you start with keeping the shear tensioned properly. In order to keep a shear tensioned properly, the craftsmanship in the shear has to be good. So if you buy an inexpensive shear, you're doing yourself an injustice, because the shear will never function properly, and you'll never be able to keep it at the right tension, and it will just never do what you want it to do. Because the way a shear is made is, the shear has a bow in the blade here. If you ever look through your shears sometimes, and you kind of see like light through there.
Yeah, when you close your blades like this, if you look closely at your own shears, you'll be able to see that the blades are not actually in contact with each other. The only point of contact is that point when they're opening and closing. They're not actually touching when they're closed like that. You'll see like a space.
Yeah, it only comes in contact when each blade comes to the point where it's going to cut. So it's important to keep your shear tightened to the point to where it's tight. You want to keep it as tight as you can without wearing out your hand. So the reason that people will loosen up a lower quality shear is because their hand gets tired out. If you have a good quality shear, you can keep it tensioned up properly so that it will function properly. And then if you keep your shear too loose, you're going to cause yourself to do horizontal thumb pressure. So what's really important is how you hold your shear. You never want to have your thumb more than like right here on a shear. You don't want to put this all the way through here. You want to have it just like this, because our hand works like a claw. If you stand and you just move your hand back and forth, it moves away the biomechanics of your hand.
That's how it naturally moves.
It naturally moves. So you want your hand to never move in another position than it's meant to move. And really, the shear is just made to go up and down with no horizontal thumb pressure. So what I see a lot is where if you don't keep your shear tension properly, you're going to put side pressure on the shear. And what that really does is that grinds your blades together. And you're damaging your blades, and you're damaging your body. And people wonder why did my shears get dull so fast? So you say, well, that guy didn't sharpen it as good or whatever. But you're responsible for keeping your shear in proper functioning mode, knowing how your shear is supposed to work. And if you keep your shear properly tensioned, the blades will function and they won't grind into each other, and your blades will last a lot longer. You won't have to get your shear sharpened. The trick is, when you buy a new pair of shears, you want to get it sharpened as little as you have to. Because anytime somebody touches that shear, they're doing something to the shear. There's instances where you don't have a choice. If you dropped it or put a nick in it, I wouldn't know. If you put a nick in your shear, don't use it anymore. Put it down, because it will just cause further damage to the shear, and it can cause further damage, to you.
And surprisingly, you can actually put a nick in your shear just by setting your shear down on your station. And you always want to set your shear down on your station with it closed. If you set it down open, hairstyling shears, they're powerful. They're a workhorse, but they're actually very delicate. You can damage them easily. And just by setting down on the table open like this can put a small nick in your shears, and that can push your blades apart. And then before you know it, you're going to be folding hair. You're not going to be able to perform a haircut like you did before. And kind of like what my dad is saying here with the shear tension, it really comes down to, like he said, craftsmanship and the material quality. The quality of the material used to manufacture a shear, it just depends on how well you can keep your shear balanced. And if a shear isn't made of a high quality steel, it's not going to be able to maintain a proper balance in order for you to constantly cut hair consistently without, by the end of the day, all my shears are folding hair now.
Yeah. So tell me, because high quality steel's a great description. And then I think for most of us, we're like, and what are those high quality steels you speak of? So share.
Okay.
First, maybe start with one thing that we have seen, in the industry, just with sharpening scissors, is a lot of shears will say Japanese cobalt or Japanese shears. And where really those shears never saw Japan. The steel never saw Japan. It's a misconception of shears. Yes, it's a Japanese style shear, but I mean, anybody that sees that label on a shear, they're going to think, oh, this came from Japan. It's a mislabel. It's the Japanese style. It's not actually Japanese.
See, there was two different kinds of edge. You have a hamaguri edge and you have a beveled edge. If you look at some of the older shears back from the Japanese, kind of brought the hamaguri edge into the focus around in the 60s. And that has a convex edge on the outside and it has concaved on the inside. So really with the Japanese shear, it's slicing, where when you're using a beveled edge, it's just, chopping it. So in order to have to make that kind of shear, you have to have good quality steels. And the best steels for shears, like on our mid line of shears, it's made out of they originate out of Taiwan, and they're made out of Japanese 440C, so which is a very high grade steel. It holds the edge really well. It has the right amount of carbon in it and cobalt and everything that it needs to like hold that edge. And then when you go up to another level of steel, we have like our higher end shears that are made out of Hitachi steel. And the difference between Hitachi steel and just regular Japanese steel is Hitachi uses the best ingredients in the world that they can use on their shears. They don't like, it would be like you making an organic cake
compared to like a cake from McDonald's,
as opposed to just a regular cake. If you use organic ingredients, we all know it tastes better when you use all the best quality stuff that you can use. So the shears that we have in our higher end line, they're made out of a Hitachi ATS 314, which is the best steel that was created to make shears. It was used for the aircraft industry, and then they found it to be conducive for beauty shears that would hold the edge very well. And they're in the formula for that shear, it's proprietary. It only comes out of the Hitachi factory in Japan. And then the other steel that's just one level below that is Japanese Hitachi 440C. And that's like just a close like second to that shear. And what makes the higher end shears is our regular shears are forged. That's where they'll take the shear and they'll stamp it when it's hot. And then they weld the blade onto a handle that's like of a lesser quality steel, because they're not going to use like the real high expensive shear for the handles.
Yeah, if you look at your shears closely, you'll actually sometimes see a little weld mark from the handle to the blade. And it usually starts about, right here. You'll see the handle get welded onto this part of the shear.
Yeah, they're welded. So, and what they do on a cold forged shear, what they'll do is they'll stamp it when it's hot, and then they'll let it cool and they'll stamp it when it's cold. And what that does is it compresses the molecules together tighter, and it just makes for a stronger, high quality product in the long run, with everything being compressed when it was hot and cold. And that would be the section, the blade you're cutting, and then all the handles are made out of like a 420 stainless. And so there's like companies that make blades and there's companies that make handles. So, and then they'll pick out the different handles, and the different handles on the shears go to by what feels, there's hundreds of different styles of handles. And with the shears that we have, we've kept we kind of know like what the styles are that everybody likes. We have a shear that has, if you go with the shear, like you don't see as many people using it as they maybe would have used it back in the 60s. It's a symmetrical handle. And the symmetrical handle really is good for the forehand positions. That's kind of where things started out with the beauty shears, with the symmetrical shear. We have a shear that has a symmetrical shear that has a butterfly handle that's carved out for the 4 hand positions, so that you can.
What are the 4 hand positions?
You have your natural, your thumb, and then you use chip and point like this. So you always want to keep your wrist straight is what you want to do when you're cutting. So that's where things just kind of branched off like that over the years, when you went from the symmetrical handles, and then companies started introducing, you know, the offset, full offset,
semi-offset,
and then the semi, you know, and then the swivel. We have one swivel like this here. And a lot of stylists have like techniques that they like to use the swivel for.
So I just want to make sure that I'm understanding, and for our viewers as well. So in regards to handle position, like I don't know what to call it. I'm going to call it position, but the position of the handles, that is really based on personal preference, or are there certain positions that help reduce wrist fatigue and increase longevity, or are there certain positions that you need for particular cutting techniques, or is it all?
There is basically 3 hand positions. There's the natural position like this. Keep your wrist straight. You never want to bend your wrist. You want to try to keep your body like straight. It protects you, your longevity for carpal tunnel. And then you have a thumb position where you could come in like this and cut a bob going around. And then you have the position where you're going to do chip and point cutting. So there's really 3 hand positions for holding the shear. The key is keeping your hands straight. You want to keep your body, and your posture is everything. You should always like try to move your customer, you know, to fit what's going to protect your body. Because if you start putting yourself in weird positions, it might be okay at first, but all them little things add up in the long run for the long haul, like you start noticing.
So in regards to textures of hair and wet or dry hair, are there particular blades that we should be considering, curly and coarse versus fine, wet versus dry?
Yes. So we have, we actually carry a shear, what we call the slicer. Yeah, we'll explain the radius of the blade. Really
what makes the blades different on the shears is there's a radius that goes on the shear this way. And this shear is like a 350 millimeter radius. It's called the Sasaba blade. And this is conducive for slicing. The way the curve is, this is the kind of shear that you would be using to slice the hair. You can cut with dry on this. It's always better to cut wet hair if you can. But I know that a lot of the techniques that stylists are using, they want to cut dry. And this shear right here is conducive for that right here, the slicer.
And that'll take a load off of, you know, your all-around shear that you would typically use.
Yeah, this shear is like one shear you'd want to have, because you'll do a lot of slicing and do a lot of work with this shear, and your shear all-around shear, it will keep that sharper longer. Instead of doing a lot of slicing with your all-around shear, it kind of saves that shear.
So for dry cutting, we want to look at what kind of metal, and like what would be the metal of that particular shear.
This shear right here.
Yeah.
Okay, this shear right here is made out of Japanese 440C.
Okay.
And this is kind of like a midline shear. It's not the highest end. You could use a shear like that, or you could use a shear like this right here. This has a more of like an 800 millimeter radius blade. And this is good for like all around cutting. So you could do a lot of stylists, like an 800 millimeter blade is made for just kind of like doing everything. This shear is good for slicing. This wouldn't do the same as that shear would do, but if you wanted to use this shear, you could.
Okay. So we're going to speak, you know, what I love about you guys is that you're here, you're open, you're willing to teach. So let's talk about right now the temperature of the market, right? The reality is right now, most people aren't working. They're going to go back after this extended time of not working. It doesn't mean they're never going to invest in shears, and super grateful to know of a company that we can purchase some through. But let's talk about the people who already have that portfolio of shears. You probably bought them at a hair show, or you bought them through a trusted scissor retailer. They're sitting in your portfolio. You don't even maybe remember why you bought them or what they're good for. How could somebody look at their current inventory? How would they be able to detect which one should I use for dry cutting? Which one should I use for detailing? Which one should be my all around? Do you have some recommendations on that? Or if they maybe know that the radius, like I'm thinking about myself, I don't know a single radius millimeter of anything. And I
Well, what I
don't even
see,
know what they're made of.
okay, I go to probably like 30 salons every week. Sean goes to that many. I see all different kinds of shears. Stylists want to be educated about the shears. Most of them don't know. Some know. I don't see, in my travels, I don't see very many slicing shears out there. Stylists know, hey, I want a slicing shear. I want to be able to do that slicing, but they don't know like where to go get one. The only places you really have to go is like a hair show. And when you go there, you're getting hit from every angle. I don't know, it would be hard to concentrate a lot. And then you see stuff on the line. So really what I see, I go through in the salons and I tell people, I'm honest with them. I tell them if their shears are good quality. A lot of the stylists that have some of the older shears are better, like Nicks. People have some Nicks and some older Joels and some Akaris and stuff like that. But what I'm seeing in the industry is ripe for people need new shears. They don't know where to go. They only go to like the hair supply stores and buy what's there because that's all that's really available to them where they can like get their hands on it. And most of the shears that I see out there are wore out because they've just gone through these cycles of people sharpening them. A considerable amount of their blade is gone. And
really just not knowing how to properly care for them. It's just like any tool. If you're using it every day, it's gonna take wear. It's gonna wear out. And if you're not maintaining it properly, it's gonna wear out in a way that will just ruin the tool.
So when I'm out there, yeah.
Yeah, that leads me actually to a perfect question that they had listed for you guys. So again, given the environment, we know we're going to go back into a time in the salon where everything is about, reducing pathogens, reducing any, we're going to need to be cleaning more than ever in between clients. So I would love for you to share the way that we should be cleaning our shears. And then also, if there are any products that you've seen, through all of your travels, if you've seen stylists using something regularly that is like a big no-no, any of those tips, we'd love to learn them.
So really when it comes to caring for the shear, it all starts with cleaning the shear off. So a lot of stylists will cut with product, and and sometimes they don't clean that product off. And after cutting hundreds of heads with product, that stuff builds up on the shear, and what it does is it corrodes the steel. And not only that, it gets in between the blades and it pushes the blades apart. And sometimes stylists will wonder why it's folding hair, because that's one of the most common complaints is, hey, the shears are folding the hair. So how do we figure out why the shears are folding the hair? Well, we start out by cleaning your shear first of all, getting that goop out of there. You don't necessarily have to take the shear apart, but really what works the best, this is what we use to clean the shears when we get them from the salon, is alcohol. Just this is 70% isopropyl alcohol. You spray the shear down, and it disinfects the shear as well. So even with today, having the coronavirus, this is good, and it's cheap. Alcohol is cheap. You just spray it down. We like to use the spray bottle. Get all the goop out.
What I was going to say, what should you wipe them with? Because I know some people, use I've seen everything.
So it's wiping the shear down. You have to be careful. So, I would use a microfiber towel, or you can use a Kleenex, but you have to be careful if you're using a Kleenex. You want to wipe against the blade. You don't want to wipe with the blade, or you'll cut yourself. But you want to clean this part of your shear off here, and then your blades. But the way you want to wipe your blades down is you don't want to slice your finger on the blade. You want to you have to play with it. It's hard to show through the video, but you have to wipe against the blade. But once you have your shears wiped off, you then want to oil them. And what we like to use is gun oil. It's not corrosive to the steel.
And oil once a day or in between each cut, would you recommend?
All the time. You want to oil them all the time. I mean, if you can think of it, each time you do a haircut, in between each haircut, keep them oiled up. Because what it does is it works, because hair gets in the shear here, and that again will, push your blades apart, and it will throw off your balance of the shear, like my dad was talking earlier. And by putting oil in there, it works the hair out of the inner parts of the.
And then
shear.
if somebody would show you how to take apart your shear, which isn't really that difficult, you should learn how to like take your shear apart completely and clean everything thoroughly. Like I would do that like every couple of days if you could learn how to take apart your shear. It's not a lot involved to take apart your shear.
Yeah, so many times. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, we just had a question from the chat box, and we'll do a live Q&A after the recording. That's always the benefit of jumping on live, so we're grateful for that. But we have a question, and the question was from Jackie: can you use clipper oil to keep them lubricated?
No, I wouldn't use clipper oil because it eats away. The clipper oil is not conducive for the shear because it eats away at. There's a nylon washer in shears, in most shears, and it will eat away at that nylon washer. What you want to use is you want to use gun oil because it has all the characteristics that don't break down and eat away at anything. It's very like friendly to all the metal and the rubber parts in there.
And where? Sorry, I'm not
gun oil from
with
Walmart or a Meyer.
Okay, so easy to get. You can source it pretty much anywhere.
It usually comes in a small little vial, and it's like a brown. Oh yeah, it usually looks kind of amber like this.
Okay.
But it works really great, and it stays on the shear too. A lot of shear lubricants you'll see, they're just little alcohol vials they just don't work. You want something that's very lubricated, because I mean, I like to use the example of, you change the oil in your car, right? If you don't put oil in your car, your engine's gonna blow up. I mean, it's not as a severe case, but you have steel rubbing up against each other. It needs a barrier between the two components. It needs oil.
Excellent.
Lubricated.
Yeah, and am I accurate to say this because we're speaking to industry professionals? So as an educator, I like to put it in a lot of terms so we can make it relatable to us.
Sure.
And so when we're thinking about why we want to clean in between, is it appropriate to describe it in these terms? Because the majority, if not all, of the products that we use behind the chair for styling aids are acidic. So just like we would think of acid corroding anything, that's why it's going to corrode and create those issues with our shears, because even if you just evaluate it from a pH standpoint, we can't have that in long-term contact with our shears and expect to uphold all of the components of the shear.
Yes, you're correct on that. And even sometimes the pH of the water in the salon will wreak havoc on your shear.
I go to salons where they have a lot of iron in the water and they don't have the proper equipment to get the iron out of the water, and that's very corrosive on your shears.
Okay.
Also, people's hair, I go into places where they cut, customers' hair without washing it, and that's like, you don't know what's in somebody's hair when they come walking in off the street.
Yeah.
The shears are delicate. They're very sharp. I mean, it's easy to put a nick in the shear if you set it on the table or you drop it. So, I mean, somebody that's been outside all day, who knows what gets in their hair, and then you start cutting their hair before you wash it. It could just take like a piece of dust that has like a grain of sand in it that could completely destroy your shear.
So how often would you guys recommend, because I know you stated we strive to sharpen as infrequently as possible, obviously knowing that we need to maintain a sharp edge. So how do you evaluate that as a stylist? Like, what would be the indicator of, okay, I'm trying to preserve the length of time between sharpenings, but this is what I should look for when it's time to sharpen?
Well, actually, when the shear stops performing to your satisfaction, when you get a high quality shear, it really doesn't take a lot to get the edge back on. You really don't have to take any material off the shear. It's all done with hand work and honing the edge. There doesn't really need to have any material taken off the shear. The only time that would happen is if you put a nick in your shear, quit using the shear, because you're just going to cause the shear more damage. You could also hurt yourself with that shear. So it's kind of like when I go around and I ask people, I say, how does the shear feel for you for cutting? Because really everybody has a different feel for the shear. Everybody's using the shear in a different way. Everybody's tendons are working different in their body. Our bodies are pretty fluid. Everybody's doing something different. So it's really all boils down to like how the shear feels for you.
Excellent. And I have to let you guys know we have a request in the chat that maybe in the future you could make a video on how to disassemble our shears, because that does seem very intimidating. So if you guys make that, we'll share that with our community widely to help assist them. And then my other kind of final question, if you will, in regards to scissors is that, you know, in the industry, we've heard a lot of like 1-part design, 2-part design. And I know you talked about having the forged and cold forged, and then the handle actually, you know, welded on. Is there a benefit to one or the other? Is there something we should be looking for in regards to that in new scissor purchase?
The one thing about the scissor industry now is there's a lot of fraud in it. You definitely want to know the country of origin when you buy a shear. You want to know like what material was put in the shear. There's a lot of sublatives where they use a lot of stuff to mislead us, like they do in a lot of different products. So you want to know, you want to do your research and find out where did this shear originate, because a lot of places, a lot of companies don't put anything on their shear. They don't tell you where it came from. They tell you it's proprietary. Well, if I'm going to go out and spend like $1,500 for something, I want to kind of know about it. I want to know like where it originated, where the steel came from. And then I would talk to a lot of people that use this product to see if it held up. You know, like a good quality shear, the edge will last for a good fair amount of time before it gets dull. So that's what I would look for. If it doesn't have, like every shear we have, we give the country of origin. We put a serial number on it. So each shear is like its own. You could insure the shear, and you want to know like what country it came from and everything. You want to know as much as you can about it, because as we got more into a world industry now, we don't know where anything's from. So there are a lot of research has to be done to track all this stuff down. Usually when you see a shear with a lot of like colors on it and jewels on it, they took a shear that was low quality and they added value to it with just a bunch of stuff that isn't really going to help you with your job. You just want to buy a tool that's going to perform. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what I would look for.
So just to recap real quick in regards to, so country of origin, are there particular countries that we should be looking for in regards to that?
Japan, they make some of the best stuff in the world. Korea, South Korea, and I'm really happy with the stuff I'm really happy with the products and the steel that we've had come out of Taiwan. But they're not really part of China. I've stayed away from any of the China products. Taiwan is they're doing their own thing over there. And before we brought our product to market, we tested it in many salons around different states and a lot of feedback. And I'm very happy with like their product, like what they say, what they tell you their shears is, it is. I've had it. The way to really find out what a shear is made out of, you have to take it to a lab. They dissolve the shears down, and then you can find out like all the elements that are in it. That's the only way to really know what's in the shear. So that's when we were in this searching process, that's what we did. So it was very timely to like bring a product to market.
Yeah, we're not
started to open our eyes was actually taking the shears to labs.
Yeah.
Seeing what was actually in the steel, and then seeing the label on the shear, it really, really shocked us.
Yeah. So you're saying if we were looking, we're going to be looking at Hitachi steel or Japanese 440C. Those are going to be like our preferred steels if we had a choice. And we're looking for Japan, Korea, Taiwan, and then hoping that the material is also from one of those territories, or are there other territories where the material might be coming from?
The best steel comes out of Japan. Like these shears that we do from Taiwan, the material comes from Japan.
Okay.
What makes the Japanese steel so good again is it's able to establish that hamagori edge, that convexing edge, which slices the hair rather than chopping the hair. So like in a lot of German shears, that's old technology because you can only put what's called a beveled edge on a German shear, and that chops the hair. It's not the greatest tool for the haircuts that are emerging today. You need you need a convex shear to perform some of these complex haircuts.
Yeah, when you move into a shear like one of the high-end Japanese shears, there's a lot of elements to go into it. It's the steel and it's the heat treating process that they have perfected.
Okay.
The way they know it takes like a few hours to bring the temperature very slowly down to get to the right. Because in Japanese shears, the Rockwell of the shear is very important. It goes to like 58 to 59 Rockwell. The material is a little bit softer than like a German shear, and it's the reason it's soft is a Japanese shear will have little fingers on it that will move back and forth that you can't see. It's microscopic, but the fingers are moving back and forth. So if you take a high quality shear and you see the shear pushing the hair a little bit when you start cutting, that's because it's slicing the hair. It's not like chopping the hair. So that's natural for that. Some people, you have to explain it to them that it will push the hair a little bit because it's slicing. And if you looked at it under a microscope, you would see like more of a clean of a slice, as if you took like a beveled edge shear that came out of Germany, it would be compressed and you would see how the hair got pinched. You're not going to have as nice edges on your hair and cut when you cut with something like that.
Wow, that is all. Thank you guys so much for laying these knowledge bombs on us and helping us to better assess our tools and how to move forward in purchasing and things to evaluate. I know that Kristen had a couple things she wanted to share with us as well in relationship to the edge that are, for industry professionals who are cutting in relationship to the handles, as the reality is that behind the chair, some of those things as an artist can be very personal, and she has a lot of education with that as a director in the hair coloring realm, and so she manages an entire art division. And so Kristen, if you wanted to jump on here in just a moment, but first, before we do, I just wanted to say thank you both so much for your time, your dedication, and your commitment to high quality products to support an industry that means so very much to all of us that are on this call and beyond. I have a page full of notes, and so I'll be excited to take this back and along with me as I continue to help people, and hope to meet you both in the future. And if there's anything you wanted to add before Kristen jumps on and shares about the handle position, please, by all means, the floor is yours.
There is a shear here that I would like to show you that you can talk to Kristen about it. It's a shear that we call the T10. It has 10 teeth on it, and each tooth has 10 teeth on it that are on a 20-degree angle, which is that's not the norm in texturizing shears. And over the last few months, before we got locked down, I was really dedicating a lot of energy to moving this shear and getting it into stylists' hands, because I knew the changes that it made in their life. Like stylists that have been cutting for 20, 30 years, and they get a hold of a tool like this. This is the kind of tool that you need to take and put into somebody's hands so that they can see what it does for them.
Will you bring that shear close to the camera? I worked with a chunking shear because of the brand I'm with for years, but I've never seen this one. I'm going to stop talking so everyone can see it. Will you guys talk real quick?
It's like something you've never seen
Trying
before.
to get so you can see the teeth. Hang on. Zoom in.
You can do an entire haircut with this shear. The shear looks very aggressive, but it cuts very soft. What it does is eliminates a lot of point cutting. So instead of moving your hand 4 or 5 times, you can do with one cut. I've got these. I've sold these to stylists, and then they've let me sit in, watch them do haircuts with it, and they show me what they used to do and what they're doing now. So we have that shear that's an amazing tool, and then we have another shear that has 30 teeth on it, and each tooth has 2 teeth on a 20-degree angle. What makes it different is because when they take shears and they wire cut these out, they do 10 at a time. But when you do a shear like this, you have to do 1 at a time. Because all the teeth are on a different angle than the blade is. And these are life-changing shears. These can Like I sold the set of these to a stylist, and she just does men's haircuts at like a high-end barber, like a high-end men's hair cutting. She does 80 haircuts between Tuesday and Thursday. And I sold her a complete set of these, and she wouldn't know what to do without them now.
Yeah, well, I think that that's in alignment with what we were talking about with wrist fatigue. If you're talking about less point cutting, that's just less closing of the wrist if you're able to replace that.
Yeah,
You know,
this year, this year you can just come in and make one cut. It will give you that soft edge that has all the like texture to it that you want, instead of going and doing all that work. You know, I have one customer that sold one too, that she's in her 60s. She goes, I can do a haircut. I don't feel like I was beat up after the haircut. She says, I feel like I did the haircut and it didn't take a lot out of me. And when
wow,
you add that up over a week and months, I mean, that's huge.
that's huge. Well, for those of you that are joining, we're going to have, I didn't want to steal you guys. Was there anything else you wanted to add? Anything else that I mean, I know you guys are a wealth of knowledge. You could teach all day. But just for those of you that are still hanging on here, of course, everyone has stayed, but for those of you that are hanging on virtually in the future, you have not been able to see the chat box. So know that you can find these high quality shears at fitzy.pro.com. Sorry, Fitzy Pro, FITZY Pro, PRO, all one word.com. And you can check them out, email them questions. I'm sure they have a contact form. So feel free to head on over there if you have any further questions. Again, thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yes, we are so grateful. And Kristen, if you could please come on camera. I know you had a couple tips that you wanted to add in, and we would love to hear those.
Yeah, so I work exclusively with Fitzy, with Sean and Mike. So I just wanted to first tell you that. And they really did change my life when it comes to cutting. And so I just wanted to clarify a few things, because I'm the one who, I'm, a hairdresser. So coming from a hairdresser versus what they do is very different. So I just wanted to give the hairdressers on here something that I've learned from working with them. And I first want to just say those chunking shears and thinning shears that he just showed, if anyone did happen to watch came in do cutting, those were the ones that we used. And so you can always go back and watch that, because they work fabulously. And the difference with those shears that I really want you guys to know is that it's okay to cut curly hair and hair that's maybe lightened and hair that you maybe would never touch with thinning shears, because the blade cuts so differently than a basic thinning shear. It's actually, cutting the hair. So keep that in mind too, when we get back to work, and maybe they can come and, leave those shears or let you actually have them in your hands, because that's what I got to do, and it was amazing. But the two things that I wanted to clarify really quick was when we were talking about wet versus dry hair types, what I've really learned from them is understanding that it's more about the kind of movement you're doing versus the actual type of hair that you're doing. So the fact of the matter is making sure that you have that slicer shear and that traditional shear, so that you can actually do your techniques like channel, sliding, slithering techniques with that slider, so you're not dulling out at your actual shear. And you use that, so that way when you go to point cut, that power to the tip is so important, and you can actually truly get that point cutting. So I think that understanding, when they were talking about those two shears, understanding as a hairdresser why that really is important, because they really do two different things. And I think the guys really did, they taught me that. And working like that makes such a difference in your career. And then the last thing was understanding the handles. And I just wanted to give a hairdresser's perspective. I'm trying to remember who said it, but someone mentioned that they only use an offset shear. And Mike did show one that he has. I was one of those hairdressers that only used an offset shear because I always got a lot of fatigue, and I thought that they were better. What I've realized from him and his company is that your hand needs to be like he was showing you in that claw position. And what you actually end up finding is that when you're in a true like symmetric handle, your hands can go and move in every direction. And the other thing that you notice is that a lot of people use finger guards, and they taught me that when you have finger guards and your hands are restricted, when you're going to change in those 4 hand positions that he was showing, your hands can't move because they're stuck. So you need to have space in those handles where your fingers are, and not make them so tight. But the handles, what you'll notice is it's not really the handle actually is more of whatever your hand actually best positions to. So doing what he was saying and putting that claw and then putting your hands into whichever handle fits the best, that's what's going to help you the most. It's not or offset handle is not for everyone like I originally thought. So now I work exclusively, well, I work with all of them because me and Mike and Sean, we work together teaching about shears. And so I work with all of them, but I've noticed that for me, that and all my staff so far, that symmetric handle, it's been taking so much pressure off of my thumb just because my hand fits in it so nicely. So I just wanted to like give you guys a hairdresser's perspective that offset handles are not, that was just kind of like he explained, like a fad, that they're still good and great for certain people, but they're not necessarily for everyone. And all handles can be fabulous to use. And by using them all and I feel like it actually has kept my hands better. I have less fatigue, and I have nothing but positive things to say because they have changed my whole perspective on cutting, my whole teaching methodology on cutting, and the way that I use my body and everything. So I want to say thank you guys, but too.
Oh, well, thank you for jumping in. Thank you for bringing that back to a relatable, standpoint, if you will, for all of us in the industry, because it is important to assess these things, and we are all unique, and we know that it's not a one size fits all, and we're all created beautifully but independently. So we're not, it's not copy paste, and to truly evaluate oneself and to work with professionals that can help you accomplish both achieving proper posture and chemical understanding if you're in the chemical or cutting understanding, but also working with those partners that help you get the right tools. So again, thank you, Kristen, for closing that out. And thank you, Sean and Mike, so much again for your attendance. I'm going to close this recording. So for those of you that have stayed to the end, thank you so much for joining. Head over and check out some of your scissor choices that are made available by Fitzy on the web. And we hope that we will see you all for our happy hour on Friday, 3 p.m., same time, same place.